Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to GDI Consulting's webinar on the sixth OneIT on-ramp. My name is Mauro Fridi, and I'm the VP for Business Development in GDI Consulting. I'm also joined with Ab Vand, who heads our Capture and Proposal Development Department, including our self-scoring division. Ab will be conducting the webinar and go into the details of the SEC OneIT self-scoring RFP. If this is the first time you're attending one of our webinars, to the right of your screen, under the blue File tab, there's a blue Download File button with which you can download the presentation slides. Chat is at the bottom of the right-hand side panel, which you can use to send your questions. If you click on the red button with three dots to the right, it enlarges your screen and hides the side panel. And when you want to chat or download the presentation, you can click on the red button with three dots to the right to expand the side panel. The reconnect button on the top of the screen is for situations that you lose connections and want to reconnect again. This webinar is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be sent to you within 24 hours. We will hold a question and answer session at the end. You can send your questions during the webinar by the chat system to the right of your window, and we'll address them at the end. 2 points before agenda. GDI Consulting is a business development firm, not an intelligence providing firm, so our webinars are essentially more geared towards the hands-on capture and, more importantly, proposal development side rather than pure intelligence. We hold webinars on a periodic basis and will be holding more webinars in the weeks to come, including a webinar on STARS 3 next week, same day and time. So if you're interested to get our agenda of webinars, please let us know. Third point is, if you're interested in teaming on this opportunity either as a prime or sub, you can let us know and we can introduce you to the counterparts who have approached us already. And okay, Ab, I guess you can take over from here. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. This is Ab Vand. I head our capture and proposal development, especially the self-scoring division, which this RFP is part of. We have a lot to cover today. I will have to go a little bit fast, but at the end, I'll answer any questions that you might have. This might be a little bit of a repeat for those of you who participated in our RFP, in our webinar previously on the same on-ramp SEC one OIT at that time it was called. So let's start. First of all, why are we holding this webinar? The SEC OneIT on-ramp is based on a self-scoring system that is recently being used by GSA and other agencies, and many people are not familiar with it. So there are many ins and outs for this, and that's why we're trying to show what all companies who want to participate in should concentrate on, what to focus on, and how to actually win on this. We've done a lot of self-scoring work before. On the original SEC, the SEC one, we got 1 win, 8 wins on Oasis, 4 wins on HCATS. Actually, that's now 7. We just heard last week that 3 of our projects clients who had participated in the recent on-ramp on HCATS had gotten the contract, so that's 7, and 6 wins on Alliance. So we're pretty experienced on doing self-scoring, and I hope that I can convey that experience to you as much as I can during this webinar. And of course, at the end, during the Q&A and afterwards also, if you have any questions, you can contact us. Okay, outline of the webinar. First, we're going to go very quickly over the general information about the SEC OneIT, then the functional areas, as they call them, the service channels, a very short brief on what self-scoring system is, for those of you who are not familiar with this. Then we'll go into the minimum requirements, the volume structure, and then we will delve into the scoring system, which is the main part. Finally, what your win strategy should be, and then the Q&A part. Okay, the general information about the SEC OneIT, obviously it's by the Securities and Exchange Commission. It was released on August 1st, and it's due on September 16th. So far, there hasn't been an extension. That's the solicitation number in case you will want to later on refer to it. And the NAICS code is 541512. You need to be small under this NAICS code, Computer System Design Services. The POP period of performance is till October 21st, 2023, from whenever the awards are made, but there are going to be 5 more option years. It's a multiple award IDIQ with 10 awards, $2.5 billion. And it is a set aside, at least this on-ramp is set aside for small business only. So large businesses cannot participate on this one. You're only competing with other small businesses. Some important dates. This was out August 1st. Initially on the RFP, it was mentioned that the question due date is August 18th. They have changed that with an amendment. So unfortunately, right now we're past that, so no more questions are accepted. Due date is September 16th, and it's expected to be awarded in second or third quarter of 2020, fiscal 2020. Okay, now the 7 areas, 7 functional areas that we'll go into more details about them that you have to provide past performance on. And in effect, actually do the once you get the contract, do your task orders and everything on are these 7 what they call service channels: application development and management on platform, business solutions delivery, non-platform, IT infrastructure operations and management, information security, data management, IT governance, technology business management. And if you go into the RFP, each of these are then they've provided subcategories to each of these that you need to actually cover. Okay, so let's talk a very short and little on a 2-minute time on what a self-scoring system is. The self-scoring system is unlike the previous times that the standard way of doing proposals that you write a technical proposal, perhaps it has a solution part and then a management part and past performance and things like that. And you do a lot of writing and you show your capabilities through that writing. This doesn't work like that. The government has spelled out how you're supposed to score yourself. All you have to do is fill out that self-scoring spreadsheet and then substantiate your claims. Substantiate it through documents that you have self-scored yourself properly. And that's your proposal. It seems easy, but as we go on, it's not that easy. And then what the government is going to do is they're going to review the proposal first for compliance and remove all those non-compliant proposals. So this is the first line of defense for the government. They're going to get a lot of proposals, and the best way to actually disqualify companies is to see who is non-compliant. And this is very important in these self-scoring proposals, being compliant, and we'll get to that later. Then they will rank the remaining proposals based on what every company has claimed their score is. And then they start checking those substantiations. And if a company's substantiation is wrong, incomplete, or whatever, they drop from where they are in terms of the scoring. So at the end, they'll pick the top 10 companies with the highest scores. So this is the process, essentially, the way that they're going to do it. So the burden of the work is actually on the contractor. They have to do a lot of document management for that substantiation and make sure that self-scoring is done properly. Now, essentially, considering everything else, you need to provide a number of past performed projects. All of them must be within the last 3 years or be ongoing for 1 year at least. And then you get your scores based on that. And I will go into detail on that. And just note, for those of you who did participate in the previous SEC 1 OIT, this is now last 3 years, not last 4 years. So that's something to consider. Now, the scoring system is based on 4 different things. The experience, or as they call them, how many of those service channels that we just reviewed have you covered in your projects, that in your contracts. You get 11,275 points. For past performance for those same projects, you get 4,200. Then you have certificates, some of the certificates that the company has, and we'll get into details of all of these. You get 1,100, and then risk management is 3,000. So overall, the maximum score that you can get is 19,575. And I'm going to now go into detail of how each of these are calculated. But essentially, this is the maximum score that you can get. It's about 2,000 less than the previous SEC 1 OIT. They've changed some things, and I'll get to that. But essentially, it's like that. So if you look at this, you'll see that the experience part, which is 11,000, is more than 50% of the score. That's where you have to really concentrate and make sure you get the highest score. Of course, the other parts are also important, but that has the highest score in there. Okay, let's see what are the minimum requirements as a whole for this RFP. Obviously, you need to be small. This on-ramp is for small businesses, so you need to be small under 541512. Your contracts as the prime can both be prime projects or subcontract projects. So if you did subcontracts for other companies, they can be used as well. You can also bring in subcontractors and use their past performance, but if you're using subcontractors' past performance to get score, those contracts must be as prime. So your subcontractor must have performed that contract as prime. If they were subcontract to another prime, that doesn't work. Contracts must have been performed during the past 3 years, and that 3 years means a date of submission, which is September 16th. So 3 years before that. Or you might have projects that are ongoing. If they're ongoing, you must show that you have at least 1 year of performance. There is an exception to that if you have an interim or full CPAR for the first part of the project. So even though it might be less than a year, but if you have a CPAR, that's acceptable. Another thing to consider, you need to cover all 7 service channels, but that doesn't mean that the prime needs to cover all of them. You'll get more score, of course, if as a prime you cover as many of these service channels. But so the combination of you and your subcontractors must cover all 7 service channels, but the prime itself does not have to do that. And finally, contracts that you use must be primarily IT services. So you can't use contracts that IT was a secondary part or ancillary part to the main goal of the project. So these are the minimum requirements. Now let's go into those. First, the structure of the proposal, which has 6 volumes. Volume 1 is general. Volume 2 is relevant experience. That's where you get that 11,000 points. Volume 3, past performance, 4,200 points. Volume 4, certifications, 1,100 points. Volume 5, risk assessments, 3,000 points. And Volume 6, price, there are no points. They just want to make sure that your price is within range. Okay, now let's go into these volumes and see how the structure of the scoring works. Volume 1 is general, so those are administrative documents. We'll not cover them. There's no score on it. You just have to make sure that you provide all the documents, including the SF-33, the signatures, and all that. So let's go to Volume 2, relevant experience projects. There are 7 service channels, and if you look under the column points, these are the points that you get if you cover that service channel. So each service channel obviously has a list of different areas that you need to cover. So that's why there is a column called references. That means essentially contracts. You can provide up to 6 contracts for service channel 1, up to 3 contracts for service channel 2, and so on. So overall, if you look at the total, 25 contracts is the maximum that you can provide to prove that you actually get, are eligible for those scores. And the scores for each of those service channels is listed, and the sum comes to 11,275. So that's how it works, and you can see that service channel 1 has the highest score, and service channel 7 has the lowest. Nonetheless, all those points count or are important, so you should actually go for them. And do remember that you can use your subcontractors' projects if you're missing any of those. And I haven't gone into detail. We just don't have the time, because each of these service channels have a lot of subcategory items that you have to cover. So maybe one of your contracts covers 2 of them, but the rest of them must be covered, for example, by your subs. So that's something to consider. Now, one important note, for some reason, they've decided that state and local government projects are not acceptable, as well as foreign projects that you've done. However, commercial contracts are acceptable. So that's a strange one. In other words, you can use federal contracts and you can use commercial contracts. You cannot use state and local government contracts or foreign contracts, foreign entities, work done outside US. Let's go to Volume 3. Volume 3 is past performance for the same 7 service channels and for the same contracts. So here you get 600 points per service channel, or equal. And remember that you have to provide past performance for the same contracts that you provided in Volume 2. You can't provide different ones. And all you have to provide are the CPARs showing that you had at least a satisfactory rating. So satisfactory, very good, and exceptional are all acceptable. And you get the same point. So it doesn't matter, if you have exceptional or very good or satisfactory, you just get the point. You get the 600 points. Anything below satisfactory, you just don't get any points. So that's how it works. If the CPAR is not available, or you have a project that is ongoing, but the CPAR is too old, it's older than 1 year, then you must get a past performance relevant experience form, which comes with the RFP documents. You have to send it to the client. they have to fill it up, and they send it directly to the government. They don't send it back to you. PPQs, the past performance relevant experience forms, must be filled and sent directly to the government in case you need them. And remember, again, the previous SEC 1 OIT, like Volume 2, you had 4 years of the period that you could select contracts, but you have here 3 years, so you must remember that too. Let's go to Volume 4, which is the certifications, 1100 here. As you can see, there are 2 types of CMMI. For services or development, you get the same points, but depending whether it's level 3 or level 2, if it's level 3, you get 500 points. If it's level 2, you get 200. And then ISO 9001, ISO 20000, and ISO IEC 27000, you get points for those. And just remember that the good thing about this is that you can use the certifications of your subs as well. So if you don't have ISO 9001, but one of your subs has it, you can use it and you can claim the point. And just to make sure that there's no mistake in the numbering, if you're going for the CMMI, it's either level 2 or level 3. So if you have level 3, you don't get the score for level 2. You just get 500 points. That's why the total for this is 1100. Going to Volume 5, risk assessment. Okay, this is one of the changes that was done here from the previous on-ramp. On the previous on-ramp, they asked you to provide 3 contracts done with SEC. And that made it very hard for many companies because not many companies had those under their belt and they would lose score. But they have removed that now. They have removed that. So right now, the first 2, prime, you get score if the prime, and here subcontractors don't help. Prime covers 3 or 4 of the service channels as a prime contract. So again, you must have contracts that you were prime on and you cover between 3 or 4 service channels. If that's the case, you get 500 more points. If you cover more than 5 or more service channels, as prime with prime contracts, you get 1,000 points. So that's something to consider. It's only for you, so you can't use the subs capabilities here. Now, it's again the third one, experience with multiple award contracts. This is only for you as the prime. You can't use the subs. You must show that you have been, you've done a project. You have an IDIQ or a BPA with at least 2 task orders or calls. If you can show that, then you get 1,000 points. And finally, what they added is the small business participation meets or exceeds small business participation goals. And they have spelled out that there are 5 different set-aside categories that, each of them get 5%. So you have to show that your subcontractors do cover all of that. So if you can cover that 20%, because there are 4 categories, each 5%, if you can show that with your subcontractors you're reaching that goal, you get another 1,000 points. One thing to cover, to note is that for covering the service channels, you need to have at least 1 contract as prime, and it needs to be 25% of the score. So in other words, remember service channel 1, you could provide 6 contracts. If you provide 1 contract as prime and 5 other contracts as subs, then it's 1/5. 1/5 is not 25%, so you don't get the score for that. So at least if you're providing 1 contract, the total contracts that you're providing for that service channel must be 4 maximum. I'm simplifying it because it's actually on the score, 25% of the score, but it's something that you need to consider when claiming 3 or 4 service channels or 5 or more service channels. Also, for the multiple award, they've mentioned that BPAs must be only BPAs that were awarded under the GSA schedule contract. So if you got BPAs from other agencies, apparently they don't accept those. IDIQs are acceptable, but for BPAs, they need to be awarded to you under under a GSA schedule contract. So that's the volume 5 risk assessment. So to sum up, as we mentioned before, 11,275 experience, 4,200 past performance, certifications 1,100, and risk management 3,000. So essentially, you fill up a self-scoring form that the government provides, and then you provide all the documentation, and they've spelled out how they want the documentation, how they want it named, how they want it organized, all of that. So you have to go by the RFP requirements and provide all of that documentation. And the important thing is that all of the documentation with regards to experience must be signed by the contracting officer. That makes it hard because then you have to start chasing the contracting officers. So that's a difference between the SEC OneIT and perhaps Oasis and others. In those, you did not have to get a signature for the forms that you fill up from the contracting officer, but here you have to do that. So you really need to have a good rapport with the contracting officers, talk to them, prepare them. So as soon as the forms get ready, you can send them over to the contracting officers. And if you're going to use some contracts that you don't have contact with the contracting officers, then you better go after them. Make sure that you create that relationship as soon as possible to be able to get the signature on time. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about win strategy. Obviously, you need to do a thorough go, no-go review at the beginning just to make sure whether this is something that you can go after or not. I'll get to partnering here, but one of the important factors in the go, no-go is whether you can partner and actually fill up all the requirements in getting those 11,000 points. Because there's nothing is stopping you from getting as many partners as you need, subcontractors, to get the maximum score. So that's what your competitor is going to do, and that is why you really need to see how your network is structured, whether you can do it or not, and start looking for partners. So doing a good go no go review at the beginning is very important. Then concentrating on the experience part instead of past performance. This is completely the opposite of Oasis or a number of other self-scorings, because those self-scoring types like Oasis or HCATs, they concentrate on past performance. You get more score from past performance than experience. This is the other way around. You get more score here on experience, and past performance just pass fail. Either you have satisfactory above and you get the score, and you just don't get it. So concentrate on experience, your own contracts and your subcontractors' contracts. Use of multiple contracts. Again, do remember that you can use the same contract for different service channels. So you really need to work on every contract's what you did in the statement of work, the PWS, and see how it covers. Sometimes a contract might cover 2 or 3 or even more service channels. So use those and use as many contracts as are allowed. For example, in service channel 1, you're allowed to use 6. So try to use as many just to get the maximum score for it. Now, partnering, as I said, you can use partnering to maximize your experience contracts. That's 11,275. You can use it for certifications. That's 1,100. And of course, past performance goes with that. And then for SB goals, which you get 1,000, again, you can use partnering. So since your competitors are going to use it, use partnering, you should do it as well. I mean, don't try to go on this solo. If you want to win, you have to partner. That's the rule here. And you really need to go after partners. You should have done already. If you haven't done that, you really need to go after them, because they are the partners, the subcontractors are the ones that are going to fill up your holes in getting those maximum scores in different sections. And then, of course, use of outside help for development and review, because self-scoring is not very easy. If you don't do the substantiation properly or naming and all of that, you're going to run into problems. So that's our suggestion as well in terms of getting outside help. Now, I wanted to also mention some of the things that can go wrong, because we've seen this before. Compliance. That is what you should eat and think and sleep with when you're doing this proposal and these self-scoring. The main reason is that this is the first line of defense for the government. They're going to put you aside for the smallest mistakes you make in the naming conventions, in not putting this signature in the proper place, and a lot of other things, because they're going to get a lot of proposals. So this is the best way to actually put aside all those extra proposals that they don't want to go and review. So you really don't want to lose just because of compliance. You might have the best score, but if you don't do it properly, you're going to lose. Another thing that might go wrong is getting those signatures late from the COs, the contracting officers. That's something to really plan for ahead of time. Give them heads up, and then plan to get those signatures as fast as possible. Not maximizing your score. Many times you can actually use projects in different service channels or other areas, and not doing that, you just not using the maximum score that you should have. Not substantiating your score properly. You have to fill up forms for each of those scores that you get. You have to provide the proper documentation. If you don't do that, you have to put sticky notes on some of them, substantiate things. If you don't do that, you don't get the score that you really deserve. And of course, I guess this is the most important part, not taking advantage of partnering. That is a win or lose part. You really need to have as many subcontractors as you can to make sure that you can maximize your score. Okay, so what services do we offer as GDI Consulting? We do two types of service: full proposal development and review and auditing. If we do full proposal development, we do a go, no-go at the beginning, of course, and then we go into our scoring assessment optimization. I'll show you in a minute. We have a special matrix prepared for that. We do all the forms preparation for you. Full proposal assembly, and full and multiple compliancy checks. And I emphasize that multiple because it's really important. If you want to do it yourself, we can also do review and auditing. So once you prepare the proposal, you can send it over to us. We go review it. We check for compliancy. When we check that you've used all the scores that you can and are justified to do. So score optimization checks we do. So let me now, at this point, let me share my screen, show you the Excel sheet that we have prepared. Okay. So this is the matrix that we have used for SEC before. we have updated it so that the changes are in it as well. Each row is one of your contracts. In this way, we can know, first of all, what is the total score that that contract brings to you. We can also see which service channels it contributes to. And then overall, when you go over it, I'm going to scroll to the right. These are all the different areas under each of the service channels. And when we put a 1, it automatically calculates the score on the matrix. So this way we can actually see which contracts are the best to be used in which of the service channels, and also where are the holes are. If you scroll down, this tells me each of those subcategories that I do not cover. When it says okay, it means that the contracts that I have does cover it. When it says need, it means that I'm not filling that. So I need to look for for example, a subcontractor that actually does have that score, that does that have subcategory. For example, here, end user and customer support services, my contracts do not cover it, so it says need here. And this way I know under which of the service channels, what I'm missing. I can go after the subs, and when I input the multiple subs, I update this matrix all the time, and this way I can be on top of the score at all times. So this is one of the matrices that we have. We have another one for review. Once everything is prepared, that is a sort of a checklist type that we go one by one and do all the documents, review all the documents, and go through that process. Okay.
Okay, well, thanks, Ab. I would like to mention that we have two contact people here. Ab, if you have any technical questions, you're welcome to contact Ab. And if you have any contractual issues, you can contact me, Maron, freely here. And you have phone numbers and also the email addresses. Now we go for question and answer session here. We have many questions. Let me start with one question here, and that is, what point score total do you think is competitive? App?
Okay, they haven't actually released what the previous competition was, but considering the fact that you are allowed to partner, and considering the fact that they have actually removed the previous requirement to have SEC experience, essentially you and your competitors should be able to get all the scores for the experience, which is 11,275, and perhaps getting the 4,200 points for past performance is not that hard, because all you have to do is to have something satisfactory or above. So that comes to nearly 15,500. Then the rest is essentially whether you can get the 3,000 points for risk assessment, and also the CMMI and the other capabilities. So to come back to your specific question, I think we can expect to have very high scores this time, unlike last time, because last time partnering was not as easy as this time. So I'm expecting anywhere around 17 or 18,000 out of the 19,000 and something to be in the competitive range. And I think each company should go for a maximum score, because the only part that you cannot by yourself, you cannot do with your subcontractors, is the risk assessment part, with regards to how many, which is about 2,000 points. So, and I'm sure that many companies do have multiple awards, so they're going to get that. And I'm sure that many companies can at least cover 3 or 4. So I would say that competition is going to be stiff, way up near the maximum score, and everybody should shoot for that number. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, now next question. Can we submit previously prepared and signed PPQs?
Well, they haven't said anything that you cannot, because there's no date on it. Of course, you should expect to have a number of questions on that same line to be answered when they release the Q&A. But do remember one thing, though. Because they've changed the date from 4 years to 3 years, make sure that if you do have signatures for contracts, the contracts are for within the last 3 years and not 4 years. Over.
Okay, now can the subcontractor be a large company?
Okay, they did cover something on that the previous time, but they have not mentioned that here. So to be honest, I do not know. This is one of the questions that we actually provided to the government, and we're waiting for that. In the previous RFP, they did mention things about that, but here it's very vague. So that's one of the question and answers that we are looking forward to, be one of the questions that we're looking forward to be answered by the government as soon as the Q&A drops.
Okay, can we use the same project for multiple channels?
Yes, you can, but remember that you need to get that form signed multiple times. So if you're using the same project for multiple service channels, you have to fill separate forms for it, and each of them must be signed by your contracting officers. So remember that.
Okay, now how could 25 references be included in Volume 2 when the strict page limits include all the information about the contracts provided on attachment 16?
Okay, you just include, say you had 25 contracts, each were separate, you include 25 attachment 16s. So it's not that one attachment 16 that you actually include. For each contract, you must include one attachment, for each service channel, you must include at least one attachment 16. If there are multiple contracts, you have to change them, because obviously different contracting officers must sign them. So you're limited to the attachment 16, but the number of attachment 16s depend on the number of service channels as well as the contracts that you're providing.
Very good. We have another one here. Could we provide TOs, task orders, from a single award IDIQ?
Yes, you can. Task orders from single award IDIQs are considered standalone contract, and as far as the government is concerned, so you can use those as contracts. So if you have a IDIQ with 5 different task orders, and each of those task orders cover different service channels, you can use them. That's no problem.
Okay, another question. If the CO is no longer available, can we get the signature from somebody else?
Yes, you can. However, there's a process in that. You can get the signature from the core or perhaps a program manager, but first of all, you have to provide their name and email, everything, as well as the email and telephone number of the CO, and then an email from them to the CO, notifying the CO that they have actually, signed this document. So that notification must be also available or part of your proposal. So two things. You have to provide the CO's name, email, and telephone number anyways, even though he's not signing. And you must also provide a letter from the core, whoever is signing, whether it's core or the program manager, to the CO, telling him that he's doing that. That email, that notification must be also part of your proposal.
Okay, very good. Another question here is, what's the criteria to show that we have experience other than writing the technical narrative in terms of self-scoring worksheet?
That's it. I mean, for each of the service channels and each of the areas under them, subcategories, you have to write toward that. And you have to write in a way that does cover and does prove that you actually do have the experience. And do remember that the CO must sign that. So you can't write something that the CO doesn't accept. So that's why they, on the one hand, they've allowed you to write towards that service channel and towards that subcategory. But on the other hand, because the CO must sign it, you can't go over the actual capabilities that you have.
Okay. Another question, are all partners required to be small businesses?
Yeah, that was the same question. In other words, could one of the subcontractors be a large business? That's one of the questions that has been asked. So far, we think not, but that's just a guess. We have to wait until the government specifically answers us back, but we don't think so.
Okay. Can a subcontractor use a subcontracted experience?
No, as I said, as a prime, you can use a prime project or a subcontract project. But if you're going to use a project from your sub, that sub must have been prime on that project. You can't use a project from a sub who was a sub of another company. That's not possible.
Well, okay. Well, we have some more questions, and we promise to answer them by emails within 24 hours. And do you have any comments, App?
I would like to thank everyone for attending. And as Maron said, if you have any questions, technical questions, feel free to contact me by email. My email is on the slides, and you can download the slides after the presentation is over. And then we can go from there. Thank you so much for attending our webinar, and see you in the future webinars.
Thank you. Bye.